welcome to the CARE Global Leadership Series, the inaugural CARE event, collaboration, acceleration, revelation, and elevation. Tonight, we are excited for this inaugural event because we have 4 phenomenal global leaders who are all doing amazing things on an international level. I'm so excited for what they're going to bring to you. And I just want everyone to have an open mind, an open heart, and an open spirit and receive this information that they are going to pour into you. Because I guarantee it, if you apply what they give you, it is going to change your life. Now, this recording will go out and we will have everyone's information. So if you want to get in touch with them, you will have the ability to do that, because we don't want this to be a one-stop, one-hit wonder. If you need to reach out to someone, then we're going to make sure that you have the ability to reach out and get with one of these amazing leaders. My name is Troy Richardson. I am the creator of the CARE Global Leadership Series, and I'm going to introduce these folks to you. But we have a panel that will be answering 5 questions, and they will go into depth on these questions. We are not going to rush this. This is not going to be a 30-minute speed show, because I want these folks to really dive into these questions with some insight and some advice that, again, is going to help impact your life. So with no further ado, we're going to get started. Now, our first global leader, she is hailing from Washington, D.C. She is the former assistant police chief for the Metropolitan D.C. Police Department here in the nation's capital. But I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about her. And then she's going to start off with the first question of, what would you tell the 15-year-old self of you? What kind of advice would you give to the 15-year-old version of you?
Thanks, Troy, for having me. As stated, my name is Chanel Dickerson. I spent over 3 decades in law enforcement. I retired in June of 2022 as an assistant chief of police. I am excited about my next chapter. I am the CEO and founder of Chief Chanel Speaks, home of the Empowered to Be You Academy, where I empower girls and women to unleash their confidence and dominate their careers, education, finances, all of that, because it's my mantra that a woman can truly have it all when their core values are instilled as a girl. So that's just a little bit about who I am. And this question is so appropriate for me, because when I was a 15-year-old girl, I had self-esteem issues. So when I read this question, I was thinking about all the things that I could tell my younger self, right? And even in line with that, I'm working on a project with female law enforcement officers titled Uncuffed Voices, where it is a book anthology where female police officers get to tell a story to their younger self. We normally don't get the opportunity to go back in time and said, if I knew then what I know now, this would be, my life would be different, right? And we somehow think our lives would be better, but that's not necessarily the case. So what I will tell my younger self is to dream big, live life authentically. You will make mistakes, but give yourself grace. And know that your friends and the people around you do not always show you what's going on in their lives. So do not make unhealthy comparisons. Learn from every situation and trust the process. And the last thing that I would tell myself is, you are good enough. I spent a lot of years in my life not feeling like that I was good enough. And then I developed imposter syndrome later in life that I overcame just because I started out of not feeling like I was good enough. So that is a spot on question. Thank you so much for asking that. I think that everyone should always start like where they started and then build their way up. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great, great response. I love what you just said, and I cannot wait to hear it again because it was powerful. So thank you, Chanel. Dr. Sarita Graham, all the way from Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes.
This woman, another global powerhouse leader, running for councilwoman out in Kansas City, by the way. So Dr. Sarita Graham, please tell us a little bit about you and talk to that 15-year-old Dr. Sarita Graham.
Grateful and honored to be among great men and women who God has chosen in this season, in this hour. And I am Dr. Sarita Graham. I am founder and CEO of Sarita Lens Ministry. And how I got into Sarita Lens Ministry was I got a phone call in October that they had found my daughter dead in her apartment. And so I always wanted to open up a shelter for the women. And at that time, when I found out, what had tragically happened, the state of Missouri contacted me and says, could you take over a woman's house? And I said, no, I don't want to do that right now because I just lost my daughter. And so when I went to talk to my mom, and so she said, well, there was a vision that you and her always had. So I called the lady back and I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead on and take this facility and work with these women to empower them, to let them know that you are special. And so that's what I do now. I have a 6,500 square foot recovery facility working with men now and women in recovery and dealing with domestic violence and mental health and substance abuse. I'm also a 5-time person that have wrote one of the greatest books ever. And I actually, it's called Finding Peace. And so God gave me that opportunity also to partner with Les Brown and John Tellerico on an anthology, in which that book is actually really doing good. I'm also in the process, and I love youth myself. As I was listening to Sherelle, my hat goes off to you, because I had to deal with the same thing as a child coming up, dealing with rejection. People called me skinny. And one thing about it is you never know who can be in your life that can actually take you to the next level. I never would even think of and didn't even actually know who the woman really was until I got in middle school. And so I used to walk home every day from school. And I was actually born and raised in Danville, Illinois. Did not know the lady that always had a tray full of cookies. And she would always say, take a cookie, baby. She said, you are special. And so I would eat the cookie, and all the other kids said, you don't know that lady. You don't know that lady. Well, come find out that lady that empowered me every day after school was Dick Van Dyke's mother, Miss Van Dyke. And I didn't know until I got in junior high school who that lady was. So I took it upon myself, and I began to work with the young girls to let them know that they're special. And how I would let them know they were special is we would hand make a wedding dress. And you either had to make Miss Purity, Miss Chastity. And so those were one of the tools that I had to use to empower myself. What I would tell the young girls at 15 years old, you know what I would tell them? Self-awareness. Because one thing about self-awareness, you can take control of your life and understand who you are and the gifts and the skills that you can actually learn yourself. The other one is develop good habits. Hang around people that's going the same way that you're going. Always remember, you hang around bad people, you receive bad consequences in your life. The other one, find what your passions is. We're all born with a gift. What is yours? I'm working with a little girl right now. She's 12 years old. She can cook. She can sew. There's many things that she can do. And the most of all, surround yourself around positive influence, because if you don't, it can take you down. And one of the things that you want to know in life is you want to love yourself inward and outward. And I am so glad to be a part, and I thank you, and I close it. And one of the things I said to all of y'all, we all are special in Jesus' name.
Thank you so much. When I put this, when this came to my spirit to develop this series, I didn't have to think long on who I wanted to join me in this initial series. I didn't have to think long at all. All of you came to my mind immediately, right? And now this is confirmation and affirmation that I did the right thing. I did the right thing. So Chanel, Rita, thank you, two queens. And now let's get a king in here. This next brother, my brother, is hailing from the United Kingdom. He is a New Yorker, also claiming that. And he is doing major empowering work with our youth all over the world, but especially in the UK. And he has one of the biggest hearts that I've ever have encountered. He is the ultimate giver. So with no further ado, as he tells us, as he's going to talk to his 15-year-old Unisa Camara, welcome, my brother.
Thank you so much, Troy. You know, it's a blessing to be in the midst of such phenomenal human beings. And I always enjoy talking to you, Troy. My name is Unisa Camara. I'm based out in the UK, grew up in Staten Island, New York. You know, in life, we make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, made so many mistakes where once upon a time, the mayor of New York locked Staten Island down, looking for me. I've been shot up, stabbed, incarcerated, whatever have you of negativity, I was involved in it. I had two businesses when I decided to live that street life into the entrepreneur life. I opened up a record label, which indeed blossomed. Then from there, seeing a lot of kids being killed because you're selling drugs on this side of the street and you have problems with somebody else on the other side of the street, and I see you making money, I'm going to pull out a weapon and I'm going to try to kill you right there and then terminate you. A little boy or a little girl coming from school get in between the crossfire and dies out of what? Not because of their own doing, but because of greed. So we opened up Camara Homes where we were buying properties and getting families out of the projects into safe neighborhoods. I transitioned to the UK to be a father, a hands-on father. Now moving to the UK, I didn't know anyone, but I built myself up again. Now I'm part of film production companies, television stations, radio stations, magazines, and so forth. As a motivational speaker, I was about to get on stage with Les Brown. And I tell my story repeatedly. I was going to get on stage, tell hundreds of people, such a phenomenal world. It's a beautiful world. Look at the rainbow, look at the sun, smell the roses. When I received a phone call from my mother saying that he's dead. Who's dead? Your son. My son had a party for his girlfriend in a safe environment where he called me Pops. I'm having a party for her. I said, where? He told me the location. I told him, don't do it. I don't feel too safe in that neighborhood. He said, but Pops, this is where she wanted. I told him, well, your birthday is what, 5 days away. Why don't you two wait and have a joint party? But being 20-something years old, youths think they know it all. So he decided to have a party at that location with security and everything. Two youths wanted to enter the venue, and security stopped them and simply asked them, do you guys have an invite? They said no. Security said, well, unfortunately, we can't let you in. My son happened to be walking by, security called him and said, do you know these two guys? He said, no. He stopped, had a conversation. That's the type of individual he is. Do you guys have an invite? The same question security asked these two gentlemen, young youths, and they said, we don't. He said, well, unfortunately, I can't let you guys in. They sat outside, waited for him to come outside, approached him, shot him in the chest. 2 bullets to the chest. Now, imagine you about to go on stage with this big individual, this icon, Les Brown, to tell the world you can accomplish anything, and you receiving a call that your son is no more. What do? Me, mentally, physically, emotionally, I felt like digging on the ground with my hands so deep that nobody can see me. I wanted to hide away from the world. But because of that, I ended up, I don't know how I left that venue, but I remember Les Brown putting his arms around me, telling me, it's okay. To me, at that point in time, I felt as though my father that is here, that is no longer here, was the one embracing me. Because when Les Brown gives you that hug, now many of us know Les Brown, when he gives you a hug, it's like that cuddly teddy bear hug. He fully puts his hands around you. Not like, he literally gets in there. So how I left that venue, God only knows. I ended up in a hotel, drinking like there's no tomorrow. Till I woke up one morning with my mom on the phone, me in the bathtub with cold water, bottles everywhere. And she asked me, is that the life you want to live? Is that the life that you think your son will want you to live? So we created Camaro Youths. Camaro Youths is an organization where we support our young men and women from going in and out of jail, from killing each other. I wanted to get on television, radio, so people can see my face, so people can feel my pain. I'm a human being just like you. I was not able to. And that is why we created all these different platforms for people to tell their stories. Each and every one of us have not lived a perfect life. So what I would tell a younger me, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be transparent. It's okay to express your pain. Life is a journey that we are going to go through. It's full of pain, but you have to enjoy the journey. But try to be transparent along your journey. Nothing is going to be given unto you, but always understand who you are. Because once you understand who you are, you learn to accept life for what it is and continue to achieve what you're meant to achieve. You're here for a purpose. Love yourself, love others, and you will be okay, but it will not be easy. That is what I would tell a younger me. Thank you, Troy.
Nisa Camaro, always compelling every time I hear the story. So thank you for your vulnerability and for leading by example. Thank you for that. Our next king, our global leader, is a man that millions admire for what he's done in the hip hop world. He has launched many hip hop careers. He's given artists their first platform to be seen and heard in the hip hop industry. He's also, again, a big giver at this point in his life. He is dedicated to giving and impacting the lives of others, which you will hear about. So with no further ado, as Dr. Dre from Yo MTV Raps, our Dr. Dre, New York Dr. Dre. Okay, let me clarify that. Good looking Dr. Dre, as he tells us what he would tell his 15-year-old self. Welcome, Dr. Dre, and thank you for being with us.
But peace, blessings, and love to the panel. Thank you so much, Troy, for inviting me here. This is an honor, a privilege, and a blessing, all of the above. What I would say to myself at 15, at this moment, I would say something that's going to sound a little horrific, but yet it is a blessing. I would say to myself at 15, death is a part of life. Death is a part of life, but life is to be celebrated. Life is to be celebrated because in the next 2 years, your blessing with your father will be your last 2 years with him. And when you lose him at 17 and you start to want to tear yourself apart and question the creator and the master planner of the loss of your father, the man that brought life to you, you will learn that that blessing is going to be what makes you who you are to this day. So I'll go back to opening with saying death is a part of life, but life is the blessing we celebrate. Because at 15, I needed to recognize and understand that health and wellness is our major goal of our existence. Health and wellness. And I say that because there's nothing I could have done to save my father. Being the youngest of 3, having invited one of my friends who was being abused into our home to make us a quartet 4. There's nothing I could have done. But what I learned from that is that it's not what you lose, it's what you gain. It's what you're able to absorb, grasp, participate, understand, and find your blessing in those years. Because now that I am technically calling myself super bad, super BAD, a blind amputee and type 2 diabetic, I consider myself able to achieve any goal that I wish to put in front of me because my life experience has taught me that. But at 15, with all enthusiasm, starring in a high school play with one of my best friends, facing prejudice for the first time, because the play we did would have me have to actually kiss one of my co-stars who happened to be white. And they said, oh, he's a talented man. Look at this young guy. He could sing, he could dance, he could do all these things, but we can't have him do that because of the controversy it would cause. At 15, all I knew was if I could be the best and do what I do, I should accomplish and get that goal. Life doesn't work that way all the time. So you can sit and you can be angry, you can be disappointed. So I accepted another role. And I said, there's no such thing as small roles. It's the role what you do makes it a part. And my best friend got the lead, and I got the supporting role, and I made that role work for me. And what that taught me is that you don't always have to be the lead actor, the lead voice, the lead person running like that. Sometimes you can be supportive. Sometimes you can learn, you do your best job and let the eyes come to you. Let the ears hear you. But do your best job. Do your best with folks. I was always brought up in, I don't want to just say the church, but I want to say multiple different religious organizations, because my family spans from Christianity into Islam, into Buddhism. I mean, quite a few things. So I was humbled at understanding that there's more than one way to reach the creator and the master planner, that there was more than one source to achieve your greatest goals. So in learning of my father's imminent demise at 15, I was confused, I was bewildered, I was shaken. But as he said to me, go do your best. Let me see what you got. And I'm gonna tell you, cancer is I don't know what to say about that disease, but it's a killer. It not only destroys the person who has it, but his family, her family, relatives, friends, and enemies as you watch the demise of your loved one. And what that did is strengthen my resolve as a human being. And it took me many, many years to understand life is to be celebrated. So when I hear people who pass away, especially in the industry I've been blessed to be a part of for so many years, and recently lost quite a few people, I tell people, let's celebrate their life. We can mourn and cry of their demise, but if we celebrate their life, if we find ways to bring forth strong positivity, love, respect, understanding, knowledge, we will have made that life worthwhile. And it's up to all of us. So when Troy asked me to be a part of this, there was no way I could say no. So I don't know how he picked the number 15. So he made me think, and I said, wow, 15. What would I say to myself at 15? Because at 15, I was called immature, outrageous, class clown, always the life of the room. I was a new DJ on the 1 and 2s where hip hop was in its infancy, because I'm still trying to understand 50 years of hip hop when I'm 59 years old. Because in 1973, I was dancing to Marvin Gaye, the Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder, and the list goes on. I do respect Kool Herc and his sisters' party in the Bronx, where they say this date emanates from. But at 15, I don't think I was using the term hip hop. I didn't start even using that till after we used the term rap music, when the Fatback Band released a song by King Tim, the third Personality Jock. And then the great group called Chic released Good Times. And you got to do it that way, because with Good Times comes a song called Rapper's Delight, which begins hip hop, the hippie do the hippie, hip hip hop, and you don't stop. Then I have to respect Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force with Planet Rock. So I consider myself a historian, a fan, a lover, a blessed father, and I'm really looking forward to what happened from 15 to going on to 60 at this year. So doing this, being a part of this wonderful panel and learning more than I ever did makes 15 a blessing that I couldn't understand at that time, But now I do, because the one thing we have is life's experience, good, bad, or indifferent. The blessing is, how do we give back to the blessing we've been given? And that's my ultimate goal with the Dr. Dre Victory Foundation, with the Power World Streaming Network, is to be able to give better access to people with disabilities and special needs. So I've been blessed with being on a program called Yo MTV Raps Today with my partners at Lover, T Money, Fab Five Freddy. But I remember what was said when I was going along, and this is why I don't like saying certain things to people. Oh, look at Dre, look at his size. He's not gonna live that much longer. And the people that said those quotes to me, in my face and behind my back, have all met death. And I celebrated their life at their funerals. But I said, how could you make that prediction about me when you're not the creator nor the master planner? So I always put that forward, especially in my prayer. Every morning, I say to the Lord, thank you for letting me make the best decisions with love and not in fear. And it helps me walk one step at a time, one effort at a time, to do this great mission, or I don't even know what to call it, that my feet are set on. Because some people would look at me, oh, Dr. Dre, oh, I feel so bad for you. Oh, this, that, and the other. I said, feel bad for me for what? For what? My condition? This condition just gives me better resolve. So that's why I look and go for the blessing of greater health and wellness, greater ability to speak and share with the other two young ladies that spoke earlier, how we can collaborate, build alliances amongst each other. And of course, it was said even better, from Staten Island to the UK, we all find a way. And my condolences to that burden of losing your son. But guess what? You're now giving us the blessing of that experience. I feel the hug of Les Brown, who I've met several times in my life. But now it means something different as we move forward. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings of love to everyone. And thank you, Troy, for having me here. This is my chapter 2. My name is Dr. Dre.
All right, Dre, you know we got 4 more questions. You got to save some, man, all right?
Look, you said to lay it out. You know
And
me, Troy.
you laid it out. But I wanna give a quote, one of my favorite quotes, and this is near and dear to me. And my mother, my late mother, she lived this, and just Dorothy Gray Richardson. Salute to my mother. And Coretta Scott King, she said, if the soul of the nation is to be saved, we must become that soul. And I really feel tonight that we are all pieces of fabric that are woven together to sew the nation back together, sew our communities back together. I really feel that she would be very proud of what we're doing. And one of the finest moments in my life was when I did have the chance to meet her and say a couple words to her. So we're making her proud, making my mom proud, we're making Eunice's son proud, all our loved ones. And I've lost 2 amazing queens in the last 2 weeks to cancer. And every time I lose someone, I feel as that last breath leaves their body, it comes into me. And what am I going to do with the purpose that they left behind and the legacy that they were fighting for. What am I going to do with that now? So people say, why are you so driven? Because I'm living for a lot of people. Our young people, our elderly, our veterans, our homeless, the mentally ill, domestic violence victims, human trafficking victims. I'm living for so many. So we're going to get right back into Ms. Chanel Dickerson with our next question is, what is the biggest void in our communities, and what can we do to address that void?
That question too, Troy, because when I read that question, I thought about, as I stated, I spent over 30 years in law enforcement, and my love for the community was one of my greatest accomplishments, and my connection with the community. My love for the community caused my greatest love for the community caused a connection with the community. And it was one of my greatest moments in law enforcement. I just want to make sure that that's clear of my connection with the community that I serve. So I grew up in the area where I worked, right? Where my last assignments, I worked in DC and I grew up in DC. And I always looked at like my childhood and my neighborhood. And I grew up in a marginalized neighborhood in the city that lacked hope, right? And so when you ask the question about a void, I thought of equity, right? When I think about in a community when I grew up, that there was only one grocery store in that community. And now many years later, in 2022, we still had the same one grocery store because the neighboring community between the two, it was 3 grocery stores. So when they did the realignment, maybe 2 went over to the next community and then 1 was in the other community. That access to education, because some may say that education is the great equalizer. Like that's a quote. It was the speaker talked about that quote at my undergrad degree graduation. I disagree with that because I don't think that it is a great equalizer because the access to education is not available to all. So when I think about the one thing, I talk about equity, and sometimes people confuse equity with equality. And we both could have a bathroom, and my bathroom could be well designed, and your bathroom could actually have a bucket, and we both have signs outside that say that we have a bathroom, a place to go and relieve ourselves, but you having the same level and the same quality. I think that that is where the propensity of violence is coming from in neighborhoods, is because it lack equity. People have lost hope. They feel like that government has forgotten about them. And so now it's like the have-nots is taken from the haves. And I talk to a lot of young people, and a lot of young people feel like that they were forgotten about. A lot of them, they were raised by their grandparents. And I'm just talking about my area and my connection. But I think that it is all around like the country. When you just start looking at what's happening in community and how we got here. And I don't think that it's going to be an easy fix because we didn't get here overnight. Unfortunately, the government has neglected these communities for far too long. And now what's happening and what we're seeing is when you lack to invest in an area, then this is what's going to happen as a result of that. And so what some young people talked about, and I feel like being in law enforcement for so long, is the crack epidemic. And I look at that time when the laws were designed to target certain groups of people, and those people were incarcerated. And now we have like an opioid crisis but now we handle that differently, right? So now it's a public health emergency compared to people being arrested and in jail. And when we arrest people who are families, parents, and then the kids were actually left to be raised by their grandkids. So if I said all that to go back to my one word of equity, I think that's where the board, I think that's what needs to be addressed. I think we need to look at communities and build them up to have the affordable housing, and not just that, like education, training centers, all of that. And every community has to look inside and say, are we doing all we can to help each person in the community thrive? Because you can't have someone that lives a grand life and then 2 streets over, you're having people without adequate food. And then some neighborhoods have, like I mentioned, a food desert. So I hope I answered that question, but I'm still going to be on my equity because I think that's huge. I think that's what we are missing as a nation. We're missing equity. So thank you.
Very eloquently stated. And thank you so much. Again, everyone, if you don't know, I live in the Washington, D.C. area, so very familiar with what's going on in our nation's capital. And the lack of equity is existent, unfortunately, 2023. But that's all over the world, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to listen to leaders like Chanel Dickerson. That's what we're going to do. Dr. Sarita Graham, what is the biggest void in your community, and what can we do to address it?
You know, I was listening to Chanel, and I concur with her. One of the things that I have really concerns about in our community, number one, we don't stick together. And I had shared with you prior, I said, I think it's a wonderful thing that you're bringing all this together, that we can come together and share our concerns. And that's what it's going to take. Now, you and I, we do the same thing, but us doing the same thing, we do share. A lot of times, we as African Americans, we don't want to share with our sisters and our brothers because we want to keep everything to ourselves. We have to learn that we are helpers to one another. And I remember as a little girl coming up, I watched my dad. My dad was very much into the community. And when the slaves would come to Illinois, my dad was a part of making sure they knew how to read. He was making sure that they found a safe haven place to stay in the motors. And so my dad always said, number one, keep your hand in God's hand. And number two, always reach back and help your community because we're greater together. That we understand that we got to move away our schisms and isms, our jealousy, our envy. You know, we have to move away those, because what happens is what our kids see us do, they mimic that. But it comes a time that we got to make a change. Either we're going to make a change now or we're going to continue doing, you know, and so being able to improve access to more affordable healthcare, supporting our community. You know, let's come together. We all have gifts. We all have talents. If we would all put them together in our community, we can make an impact. So the younger people are looking at us. What are we doing to make a greater impact in our community? If they're not seeing it at us, we're not teaching them. We're not training them what to do and how to be able to support each other with love and being able to share that. And when I think about the job marketing, how we are not really getting the jobs that we should obtain. I'm looking at the difference in the lack of trust and the tension that we're having. A lot of our kids have so much tension in them. It's unbelievable. But we're not reaching out to them to let them know that we're here to help them. Let's have some dialogue and some conversation. Let's don't all look at it as an adult. Let's look at our youth. Let's look at our young adults and say, hey, how can we really come together? They first got to see it in us. Even though we're faced with a lot, there's a lot that we have learned. Our parents have taught us a lot of things, how to sustain. And we've lost a lot of the focus. Yes, we know the dynamics of life, but there's a way that we could come around the dynamics and be able to come together as a community. Like she said, be able to do job training. That's what I do with the mental health purpose. I give them the classes on mental health. I make sure I'm there with them. If I need to travel with them in some area, I'm going with them. If they need a GED, I'm making sure they get a GED. We also have a junior college. I want them to be educated and be able to work with them. We can avoid some of that ourselves. The violence is overtaken, and most of it's coming from our community. Lack of knowledge, lack of love, and then I'm gonna be honest, I'm getting ready to say this, it may be strong. A lot of churches is not doing what they need to do to actually serve the community. And so we got to look at it in a different form and say, hey, how are we going to come together, be helpers to one another? I have a distribution center. If anybody need anything and I have it, I'm welcome to give. I work with direct release, dealing with opiate addiction. I have the supplies there to train them how to stay off the drugs. And matter of fact, I've given all names. I'm just really blessed again to be on Troy. And I'm really grateful and I'm thankful. And Les, he's a good friend of mine too. And I love him dearly. I wrote a book with him. And one thing about Les, he'll stay on you. And the name of that book was The Greatest in You. And we have to remember that greatest that's inside us. He's a good person. You can call him. He's always there. And I love him. Matter of fact, we're writing another book. So I'm going to pass it to the next great brother. Please.
Dr. Sarita, I mean, you see, you're so full of life and full of passion. That's one of the things that I love about you. You wear it on your sleeve, right? But you said togetherness, man. I like to say no egos, it's we goes. We all go together. Let's get there at the same time. No rush. Everybody's going to eat and drink and be merry. So thank you for that. Equity and togetherness. We're off to a really good start. Unisa, my brother, what is the biggest void for you in the UK, and what can we do to address it?
I spent a lot of time in DC, and the property value in DC, it's a shame. It's a shame. And Dr. S, the togetherness we are lacking. I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite. I've done a lot of harm as well to our communities because of what I was involved in. But again, I realized my wrong, so I tried to correct it by trying to elevate our community. The togetherness we are lacking. Our community leaders are not there to support us, to elevate us. If you think about what is going on in the community, one thing we're lacking is the connection. Dr. S, you have a shop right here. Chanel, you have a shop right here. And your shop is being run by Chinese people. Dr. Dre, you have a shop right here. I mean, down the street. And your shop is being run by a white person. Now, Dr. S' shop is being run by a Black person. What do you think me as a Black man is going to do? I'll go to Dr. S's shop and disrespect her. And I want the price to be lowered. And then I'll go to a Chanel shop because it's being run by Chinese people. I'll argue with them, but I will pay that full price. So I'd rather take my money out of my community and take it down the street to another community that don't care about my community. And Dr. Dre's shop that is being run by another race, I'll take my money there. What do you think the value is going to do to my community? Equity is going to drop because there's no value in my community. If we have togetherness, me coming to Dr. S's shop and spending my money there, developing her, is going to make us develop, not just to put more centers where we can support our younger generation, but also where we can teach our younger generation to support the elderlies. You know, there's something called a ripple effect. If you take care of one, one will take care of another. And we continue that. And that is something that I've realized here in the UK. Our community leaders, that I deal with a lot of mayors. I go to the parliament. And one thing I realized is that I have a big mouth. I never knew that before, but I figured that out. I learned that. But when I go to the parliament, one thing that I didn't know is that, oh, Eunice is in the house. Oh, he's going to say something. Oh, you goddamn well, I'm going to say something. They had a budget for our culture. They had a budget for our culture. And guess where that money was going? So it's going to the theater. How many Black people that are living in these poor communities are going to the theater? Our community leaders knew this, but they never expanded on it. So when we found out about it, and I was at that parliament, we expanded on it. And we got some of that money back into cultural development. Troy, to answer your question, the biggest void in our community is that our leaders are selling us out. They're not committed to us. They're not committed to the cause. They're not thinking about our children. They're thinking about the here and the now and for themselves. And that is quite shameful. Thank you.
Brother, you touched on quite a bit, man, but you're so right. We don't have the right leadership in there. We could vote these leaders out. I tell people all the time. We have the ability, because most of them are on 2-year residences, I will say. So we have the ability to get them out of office if we don't like what they're doing. I mean, I had a presentation to the Black mayors of Maryland a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago now. And I've reached out since twice, and I've not heard back from them. And along with me was one of my business partners, 85-year-old Bishop Vandy Kennedy, who's been laying it down in the community for over 45 years. And you got the nerve to not respond to me, to this man? So leadership, got to get him out of there. Got to get him out. So equity, togetherness, and new leadership. We have control. So my brother Unisa, again, thank you for that, brother. Dr. Dre.
Yes, sir.
The biggest void, and what can we do to address it?
With all due respect to the queens and the King Unisa, I come up with simplicity because I was involved in politics for many years, and all politics are local. The words I want to use are words that come off rough, but they are what needs to be in order to function and move forward. Responsibility, resources, and contributions. If you want to control your community, you have to be involved in your local electorates, from school boards to congressmen to local officials. You have to engage, and you can't just engage singularly. I will quote Public Enemy: move as a team, never move alone. Because what happens is you are easily deluded when you move alone. You get like-minded people like we are on this call, and you deal with the equality and equity of a neighborhood. In most communities of color, there are food deserts. But what has happened recently, you have a large influx of migrants from different parts of the world who have now joined, and now extended resource issues, whether it be fire, law enforcement, whether it be food deserts, whether it be creating and opening your own shops. As for example, what Unisa said, a person from Chinese descent can come and move into a neighborhood of color, open a Chinese restaurant, and we will support it without question because they adjust their menu to fit the community. Because most people from China will come to America and say, I don't eat that. What Chinese? That's not Chinese food. They make food to fit the community they're serving. But the same entrepreneur of African American descent can open up a soul food restaurant and people will support it for the first 2 weeks. Grand opening, third week, grand closing. Why? Because they can't afford to maintain the simplicity of the menu to support itself in the community. And I studied this from an Italian position with pizzas and from a Chinese position with rice. And they said, do you know how much it costs to buy a bag of rice and then to make meals with rice? And then do you know what the profit margin is on that? Most people don't know that. If you go to a pizza parlor, when they buy the dough, they buy a certain amount of dough. And then they make X amount of pizzas per roll of dough. Do you know how much pizzas and profit they make before lunch with one roll of dough? How many pizza pies? When you walk into the soul food restaurant and you're buying all the food that we love and, you know, the cachet and our survival foods, that becomes very expensive. Because ribs, chicken, fish, you name it, extremely expensive. That's why food trucks right now are so much the rage. But what's being sold on those food trucks is what matters the most. So it's bringing forth the economic resources that will support the community and then rebacking that up with political votes and strength. But we don't do that. We have to unite. In other words, that's why when I say all people of colors have to come together, because we can be specific and say Black people, but when you examine the numbers, they don't equate out. Where they equal is when we deal in law enforcement, when we deal in the hustle on the corner, and even now the hustle on the corner is starting to become federal and state controlled. So when you deal in selling cannabis or marijuana, now, if you're in a state that actually legalized it, your corner pharmacist doesn't have a place to go. So they try to open up quick shops on the side. And once you start getting into that money and messing it up, they then come down on you with law enforcement saying, you have to be regulated under this, this, and this to open the store. So how do you find out about how to deal with those regulations, how to get those documents you need to open your own? You have to participate in the legislative process. You have to participate in the community process. We can't all just go to the local basketball game and go, yay, he scored 60 points, but the team lost by 65. We have to turn that around. We keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. That's called insanity. So for me, it's resources, responsibility, and contributions. You have to input into the government process to be the government. That's what government's about. As we speak in the preamble of the Constitution of the United States, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and pure domestic tranquility, we have to be the people. And we have to unite from our new citizens, our new neighbors, our senior neighbors, and our youth, and make the process work. Not just the hustle, but the process. My name is Dr. Dre.
All of you have touched on education. And that leads me to one of our sponsors tonight, FSG, Family Share Group, that really empowers communities through education first, but also financial blessings. So you will get that contact information when this recording comes out. But it's Framile, F-R-A-M-I-L-E. That's family and friends put together. Share group, FSG. That. Our third question, coming back to Queen Chanel Dickerson, is, do you think Martin Luther King's dream has been realized? We celebrate it all the time, right? But do you think it has really been realized? What do you think, Chanel?
I do not. We have made great strides, great progress. I would not have retired as an assistant chief of police in the nation's capital if we have not made progress, right? But I go back to the last question when I talk about equity. Until income, healthcare, wealth, all of those things, if they're not equitable, we're going to always have disparity. Like, I may be able to hold hands with friends of other ethnicities now, and they can come to my house and stay and we can eat dinner, and I don't have to go to a back door to use the bathroom or have a separate water fountain. Like, those things are different. But when we just look at the things that are happening in society, and this question, I think that we could have a whole segment on this. So I am going to make sure that I keep it to a minimum, but just hit in reference to my point, because January 6th would not have happened if it was realized, right? I saw it. I was the highest ranking female police officer in the nation's capital for DC Police Department at that time. And I know what I experienced. I know what we saw. I see the divide in the nation over things. I see, because of the election before the last and how things happened and how emboldened people were to do certain things. So we have some work to do. And I think that everyone probably can agree to that. But I'm thankful to be a part of the solution and on the side with the great men and women that are in here and women who are in here with me. We are part of the solution, because I'll never want to just point out what the problems are, because we do that all too often and we don't have any solutions, right? So I'll leave with this, because when I think about what happened in Memphis with the Tyree Nichols situation, right? And when you think about 55 years ago, because I listened to the eulogy of Reverend Sharpton, and he talked about 55 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King was in Memphis, fighting for those police officers to be able to have the jobs of police officers. And then they become police officers and then take the life of someone 55 years later. Who would have thought? He would have never known back then to see in the future, to see fighting for equality for people and then have them to then turn and do that. So I digress on that, but I'm saying that no, it has not. We have made progress and still have a lot of work to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Great points. Great points. Dr. Sarita Graham, has Martin Luther King's dream been realized?
Yes. And and I salute his dream. And I think at that era, he had done great things. And there has been great things that have followed behind him. And I concur with Chanel, I still feel there is still work to be done. And one of the biggest things that we're also are facing right now, on the other hand, is that racial disparities. And it's continued to exist in many areas, included in the income, education, criminal justice, systematic racism, bias is still continue. We're still dealing with quality with education, healthcare, housing, job opportunity, incidental racism. We're still doing it. Just like, I don't know if y'all been watching the news, or this guy who's doing these cartoon things and the way he was down in African America, that stuff is still existing. And I think how are we actually really going to come and overcome some of these? And I give Dr. Dre credit on it. You got to really get into the politics and know what's going on, that you can have a voice. But even having that voice, we still have to come together as one and understand we're better together and that we could be helpers to one another. And we have to understand that regardless of who we are or what we are, what labels we have, when it all boils down, we all need each other. And then when we make that decision that we're really going to really help each other, then for the way that we can become some of those disparities, us as African Americans, we can break some of those biases ourselves. There's so much biases among us that we have to understand we're greater together. That's the reason why I really love Les, because one thing about it is he talks about the greatest in all of us. And if we would wrap our arms around each other and not worry about whether they get more resources than I do, you may have the ticket for that individual, and that you can just give it to them and let them open that door where they can be successful instead of being selfish. Well, I got mine, you get yours. But we can make an impact in that if we come together. And that's what I would like to see in this 2023, that we start beginning to come together. If I have information that can help you along the way, I'm more than happy to give it to it. And it should be vice versa, that we be helpers to one another, not to use one another, but let each other's know, look, we're sisters and brothers in Christ, and we can be helpers to one another. I may have something that you may have something that I don't have. But if we come together as one, like this, as one, we're saying our prayers to the Lord, because when all those African Americans came together to build Tulsa, look what happened. People tore it down because they know they had the strength, but we can redo that and have that strength and begin to start working on it, and us coming together. Thank you.
So, Unisa Camara, how do you feel about the dream of Martin Luther King Jr.?
I have a dream that one day my children will live in a nation where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character. Ladies and gentlemen, our children are being killed on the street due to the fact that they're Black. So are they being judged by the content of their character or by the color of their skin? Chanel, I know you're in DC, you're retired. I'm quite aware of what's going on in DC, a lot of things that are going on. I stay updated. Now, we have police officers that are abusing our young Black men as well. And this dream of Martin Luther King was put forth for them as well. There's a case currently in Albany, a construction worker. Please look this up, ladies and gentlemen. This was February, I think, 7th or so. Construction worker wanted to go into a restaurant. His employer told him, you cannot enter through this way. You have to use the other door. Albany, yes. Yes. And the gentleman that had said it was a Jewish man. Literally, please look this up. Albany, New York, February. So I have a dream that one day my children will not be judged by the color of their skin. We put on social media all the time, and there's so many cases of police abuse. And now the funniest thing is that here in the UK, a lot of our political leaders that are supposed to be supporting our young women are sexually abusing our young girls, are sexually abusing our little men that are supposed to one day stand up and put their chest out and say, I'm going to protect my home, I'm going to protect my community, I'm going to protect my family. If these Black men are abusing our young Black men, our young queens that are supposed to be, let's revise on his dream again. Let's think about this. All our ancestors have been through so much for us to wake up. It's quite sad when I have to put on the news and I see this. In every house, I have a TV in my house. Even in my office, in my house, I have a TV. I don't put on the news. I deal with television, but when I go to the studio, it saddens me. When I have to deal with these leaders of ours, and I sit there and I say what is on my mind, they say you talk too much. Listen, as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to talk. We need to protect our children. Our ancestors died for you to be where you are right now. And that was Martin Luther King's dream. So, Troy, to answer your question, no. 199% no. One day, I pray. I know I will not be alive to see it, but I hope to be. But the way our society is going now, I don't think I'll be alive to see it. But I know Cheryl and I, we will keep striving. We will keep pushing for that. So just to answer that, I'm going to cut it short. My answer is no.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother. Dr. Dre,
Yes, sir.
Martin Luther King dream. Has it been real?
I'm going to say this as it was spoken of earlier about the solutions and being positive. I'm going to bring forth the positivity of the dream and keep it in the word dream. And then I'm going to bring it to the reality. As far as the dream is concerned, it's an incredible speech. It was so eloquent in 1963. It moved us to a point where it said, yes, we can. Where we can elect an African-American man president of the United States in 2008. Yes, we can. But as far as the dream is concerned, in a recent panel discussion, people were asked of color, when you hear the tune, happy birthday to ya, happy birthday to ya, happy birthday, is it what does that represent? And the majority of these young people of color from age 6, almost 40, said, oh, happy we sing the happy birthday, that's the Black Happy Birthday song. And the interviewer said, well, do you realize that song was written by Stevie Wonder on the Hotter Than July album? And it's technically an homage to Dr. Martin Luther King. And they said, no, it's not. He don't sing Martin Luther King in that song. And he played the part of the song that said, thank you, Martin Luther King. Happy birthday to you. So see, that's where the dream lets me go. Here's a blind man that was arrested, fought, marched for the holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King to be a federal holiday on the Monday after the 15th of January, which now has become one of the greatest sales dates when you want to do a sale in the African-American community. Although President Obama said, oh, it should be noted as a day of service. People don't do much service on that unless it's specified to the same people over and over and over again. And as much as Reverend Al Sharpton can go do a eulogy, about 55 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis because he went down to protest for sanitation workers. He wasn't thinking about becoming law enforcement in Memphis in that? No, it was sanitation workers. He was begged not to do it. And even that day he was assassinated, he had a loaded 38 caliber gun on his nightstand when they came to rush to get to him, because he was afraid. He didn't want to die. He expressed the fact he wanted to see the promised land with all of us, but he said he doesn't feel he was going to get there with us. So even the incredible El-Haj Malik Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X, told Martin, the only thing we have in common is we're dead men. So when you examine it from that position, and understanding, when you look at the civil rights movement and its glory and its marching and it's this, and President Johnson signing certain things into law, and the Congress feeling guilty after President Kennedy was assassinated, the civil rights movement was a failure. And if anybody said, what are you talking about? Look at all we're doing now. Look at this, look at that. No, it was a failure. Do you still have the right to vote that you screamed about? No. Do you still have equity in real estate in many communities? No. Do you have equal representation locally, statewide, or federal? No. Even what what's the name just brought up about in Albany? See, because me, when I grew up and I went to school, I learned the Mason-Dixon line was the Canadian line down all the way to the tip of Florida. It didn't start down in DC and go down, or in Delaware. No, the Mason-Dixon line goes from east to west in Canada. Because that civil rights movement, which we all fought, died, and people languished for, El-Haj Malik died with cotton and lint in his pocket. We never brought up a force to deal with our inequities that are already guaranteed in the Constitution of the United States. So when you create separate laws and you want to, this group gets this group gets that, this group gets this, no, it doesn't work. Yeah, we bought Cadillacs, we drive BMWs, some of us got nice housing, some people became billionaires, millionaires. Rap music and hip hop showed the world we could come together. But even in that instance, we didn't own it. To this day, we don't own hip hop and rap music. If it wasn't for white folks purchasing, it would have died out because they had disposable income. As people of color, we had tape decks. We made copies. We take the radio. Those are facts. Even in the infancy of Jordans, there's a movie coming out talking about that was a big risk for Phil Knight. He took a chance on a guy and hoped it would work. And it did. Michael Jordan respectfully owns less than 25% of Air Jordans. And when they gave him an equal line and they called it Jordan, did we go support that? No, because those were cheap. Those weren't the Jordans. But young people of color stand online for hours buying Air Jordans. And they can't afford it. And they usually live in the lowest economic communities. But they have to have those Air Jordans. That we stand on corners and we eliminate our own people through genocide. Now, yes, did the overseers and the colonizers start that behavior? Absolutely. Are they continuing it now with Marjorie Taylor Greene and the folks in the House of Representatives? Are we going out saying this must end and fighting for our rights? No, we're not. Because all you got to do is have an Essence Festival, and we down there partying and doing what we got to do and making sure we getting the message across. And when the weekend's over, we walk back to the same tragedies we see every day. So I can't be fooled anymore by saying, yeah, the civil rights movement helped me. Not like the Jewish community, who bands together religiously and as a community and pulls their community up economically, religiously, and physically. When something goes wrong in the Jewish community, we know about it everywhere. Everywhere. Those 5 officers that committed that atrocity to that young man, there was something more to that than just a traffic stop. It was. And all the other instances that we see, they're now trying to figure out, well, George Floyd, was he really, or did he cause his own demise? Did this, that, and the other? We've been saying this since 1619. So the civil rights movement, did that really work? Or are we still fighting for the same rights that we fought for back then? Only in America can they create a right and then take it away from you, and we don't do anything about it. Ask women. Supreme Court has taken away women's rights to govern their own bodies. What are we doing about it? Aren't those civil rights? Don't women have equal rights? Not in America. Not the way we think they should. This is why I have great respect for the women of Iran who are dying to take the hijab off because they decided to hurt one young lady. And they're willing to die for those rights. Ukrainians are fighting Russia with everything they got and refuse to lose, for real. They're like, no, we're not gonna let you come and take everything away. But in America, in the United States of America, King's biggest mistake was following Gandhi. Gandhi could pull that off in India. And you see what happened to him? You walked up to your oppressor and said, I beg you to treat me equally. That doesn't work. That's what Malcolm was saying. You cannot defeat these people asking for them to stop beating you, raping your women, destroying households economically at your whim. We are the greatest consumers on the planet Earth, and we have no power. So running around getting angry about NFL, why can't we own an NFL team? Because those are small businesses created by families. They're not going to let you do it. So if you really want to change sports behavior in the NBA, the NFL, Major League, walk away and create your own league. Then you create power. Then you create economic equality. But we don't do that. We have been brainwashed to think we will fight them on Capitol Hill when they and their own president created an insurrection. And he's walking around free. His own vice president will not testify. And they told him we wanted to hang him. So is Martin's dream, was it a success? I think we need to stop saying those words and start acting like we demand what's written in the Constitution. Because don't use the Declaration of Independence, because that wasn't written for you or any other woman or any other person of color who built this country. And right now, Monsanto's is controlling your food. They're making you believe there's a chicken shortage. A chicken shortage? You can buy, chickens will procreate and create eggs anywhere on this planet. There's a shortage of eggs? The prices are this high? Because we choose to pay for them. But when we started to control our own communities, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was doing with the Nation of Islam, he said, buy amongst your community. You don't have to buy from those other stores. Build your own supermarket. Create your own black farms. Sell to your own black stores. Create your own distribution centers. We don't do that. Instead, we run around screaming and marching up and down and buying new Nikes and making sure that we contribute to the overall GNP that doesn't include us like that. My goal is to reach out to people with great wealth, great economics, and say, can we get this money and build for our communities here? We want to build 3 or 4 new supermarkets. So when some young white radical walks into a Buffalo supermarket and decides to shoot and kill people because he's been brainwashed, I want to have some folks out there that can actually say, no, what is he doing with that? We're going to take him out, take him down. That's what we're not doing. We have to stop the genocide, and we have to bring the love back into our communities by supporting our communities, not staying in a dream. Because I think Martin's vision was very poignant. He meant well, but you don't go into a war meaning well. Ask Mr. Zelensky in Ukraine. He's begging everybody in the world, help us. Because if we fall, it won't stop. And this is what we do. We are great people on TikTok, but we haven't created our own. What kind of nonsense is that for the greatest creative people on the planet Earth, that we can't create our own? And when we do, we don't support it? Because I watch migrants from different Spanish nations all over the country come to America. And the irony was they were told, okay, we made this provision in Brooklyn for you for 1,000 single men to stay in. And they had put them up in a 5-star hotel. And you know what those people said? I'm not going there. That's crazy. Oh, there's no heat over there. There's no this, there's no that. And the mayor of New York had to go and stay there overnight and says, what are you talking about? You migrated to this city and all we've done is accommodate. What about all the people of color that had been here before you showed up and didn't get that kind of treatment in 5-star hotels and wouldn't want to give up the space so that the families with children could be accommodated so they can build a life? They want to come, you want to work. I'm all for that. I believe in that. Because that's what it says on the Statue of Liberty. Because not one colonizer was born here. Ask the Native Americans who are fighting for their own water rights in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. This is what I say. Let's stop dreaming and let's deal with the reality. Move as a team. Never move alone. My name is Dr. Dre.
Yes, your name is Dr. Dre. Listen, guys. I knew this was going to be provocative, but we have to have bold approaches. We can't move subtly, right? We don't want to sneak up on nobody. We want them to hear us coming. Enough is enough. We must take control. But the fourth question is, why is it important for our leaders like you, right? Leaders who get it, to collaborate with one another? Chanel.
Will definitely be quick because you're right. I think all of the questions were kind of tied into the next question, right? And some of our answers. But collaboration is paramount to prevent silos. It also provides diverse perspectives. I think leaders have to be careful with like the one voice, one message, because if people disagree, other people in a community or on a job or an organization disagree, you have actually silenced their voice. And then you won't know if they have better ideas because it will be better innovation. Someone has said that you can go fast alone and you can go farther with a team. So it's necessary to bring other people in. I look at the people that I'm here with tonight in the background, and I'm thinking about all the ways that we can collaborate to be able to be solution driven and accomplish something that we've mentioned in all of these other questions. So I'll leave my answer at that and then move on to the next panelists for their response.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Dr. Sarita, why is it important for our leaders to collaborate?
I think the question speaks volume. And I look at us collaborating like what we're doing now, enhancing, the problem solving and being able to come together and express our skills and how we can really be a blessing to each other. Shared knowledge. That's one of the key things that we lack. We don't want to share the knowledge. The other thing is we have problems with communication. We need to improve our communication where the collaborating, the leaders can be helping to improve communication and understanding between, the whole team and of the organization. And I think as we look at being able to help her more, you got your gifts. She's got and has a talent. But when they come together as one, boy, it could be a mighty, mighty, mighty impact for our communities, and that we do it together. And I think that's the biggest problem with us. It always want to be I, instead of we. And so I think the collaboration among the leaders is very important in this season. I don't think it's too late for us to come together and make an impact for our community. And that's what I would like to do. Just like Troy, you got a TV station. I think Mr. How you pronounce it? Unisa have a TV station. I have one. We need to come together. We could do more impact if we come together. And that's my perspective on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarita. Moving on. Unisa, why is it important for us leaders to collaborate?
It's almost 2 a.m. here in the UK. I chose to be here because I know it was going to be brilliant minds coming together. And me being in the midst of individuals with different ideas, strategizing before we execute, it's a phenomenal thing to me. So Dr. Sarita said it. When we come together, we're more powerful. But when we think I can make a difference alone, yes, I can. But the process is going to be longer. But when we come together, we are a force not to be reckoned with. I ended there.
Thank you, my brother. And thank you for pointing out. You are so right. Unisa is in the UK, 5 hours ahead of us. It's coming up upon 3 a.m. for this king. And he chose to be with us. And that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes. And I don't even know what to say, right? I've done it, I've got clients in the UK and they'll call a meeting and I'm there, 2 a.m., 3, whatever it is. It's what we have to do if we're going to make a difference. It's sacrifice. Sacrifice. We're going to have to make sacrifices if we're going to make progress, right? And that's what global leaders do. That's the mindset. So, Dr. Dre, why is it important for leaders to collaborate?
I'll keep it simple with a collaborative suggestion. And the first part of that would be, since we're at the last day of what's quote unquote Black History Month in the United States, I'd like to move that month. And I think we need to collaborate with such brilliant minds that are on this call. Let's move it to the month of May. Why the month of May? I'll give you 3 simple reasons. First, Mother's Day is in the month of May. And people of color, of all colors, love to celebrate our mothers, our queens, our aunts, our sisters, our girlfriends, everyone. Mother's Day. Why not? Second, El Haj Malik Shabazz's birthday, aka Malcolm X's birthday, is in the month of May. He's never going to get a federal holiday. They still fight about Dr. Martin Luther King's holiday. But we could do it here in the month of May and celebrate such greatness, such wisdom, such hope for our people. Third, but not last, Memorial Day. Because on Memorial Day, we celebrate the veterans who went out and fought wars to protect this great nation of the United States. But let's protect all the veterans of all the foreign wars and the domestic wars, such as the Civil War. And being a descendant of slavery and a descendant of the Caribbean, I say, why not? This gives us 31 great days to celebrate such great feats of Black history. And here's the secret of this collaborative effort. June is Black Music Month. So technically we get 61 days back to back. Isn't that when Juneteenth falls? I say that's why it's great that leaders collaborate, because none of us can do this alone. So none of us should be out there by ourselves. And that's why I enjoy this call and feel blessed to be here with such great minds. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Troy. My name is Dr. Dre.
Series. Collaboration, acceleration, revelation, and elevation. So that leads me into our last and final question. And that is, if you could choose anyone, either alive or dead, to have dinner with, who would that be? For me, it's going to be my mom, right? It's going to be my mom. So, Chanel Dickerson, who would you choose to have that dinner with?
Hey, I'm not even gonna take a long time to answer this question, but Troy, I do agree with you in reference to my mom, and I just had dinner with her because my mother is still with us. But I went to, and my mother is one of our pioneers, right? But I think about who I stand on their shoulders, right? Who has done so much. And there's so many people, so it's hard to pick in reference to one, right? But just to make this quick, is I decided in 2021 that I would stand up and speak out against injustice, right? And I knew that a lot would happen when I did that. A lot of marginalization, blacklisting, counter accusation, all those things I was faced with. So I thought about Harriet Tubman, right? I thought about Harriet Tubman escaped slavery and then went back multiple times to help other people, right? And so when I was thinking about my adversity that I was going through, I said, what did she experience by escaping and going back again and again? And they said that she would have freed a lot of other people, but people didn't realize that they were enslaved. So she's given me hope in this part of the journey. I know that I'm supposed to be on this journey, and I would do it all over again. And I retired early because of it, but I needed to do it to help people like me, to speak up for people like me and be the voice for the voiceless. So Harriet Tubman would be my person, because I would want to ask her, how did she do all of that and keep her sanity? So thank you so much.
We're going to go right to you, Nisa.
Okay. Who would I want to have dinner with? Me. You know, each and every one of us, we have our own journey that we're upon. And I respect our elders that came before us. The way my father strived to make a difference. He used to always say, never be nobody but yourself. I know the weight that I carry on my shoulders. I know who I am. I know what my objectives are in life. I know I'm going to make mistakes. So if I'm to sit with somebody, I am my own competitor. I will sit with me and I'll strategize. So not to be selfish, I know Chanel's like, oh, I know he was going to say that. But I would have a dinner, I'll have a nice steak dinner and just build. That's it.
I respect that, bro. I respect that. Dr. Dre,
Yes, sir.
who you eating dinner with, bro?
I mean, first and foremost, I would love to sit down with everyone on this panel and break bread, have some vegetables, maybe some steak, some chicken, and some fish, depending on people's dietary needs. But if I have to go into it being one person to discuss this with, and my first notion was my mother and my father, because my mother still lives at 95 years young, and the blessing would be to see her turn 96. My father, because I'd have 1,001 questions. But if I go based on what's in my heart and where I want to go, and this chapter 2 of my life, I'd love to sit down and have dinner with Nat Turner. And I would ask Nat Turner, what drove you to this insurrection you created? And that your goal of escaping was the most poignant thing in your life. And even the damage you caused, I want to know not why, but what was your goal in mind? Was it freedom? Was it revenge? Was it trying to end the slavery that you were a part of? What was that vision about? And I'd love to hear what he'd have to say. I would love to like, what this is what this was about. Because even when I don't want to say her name wrong. I apologize. Said Harriet Tubman. That kind of journeyman, and people don't understand why Harriet Tubman carried a gun. Because when slaves who she was bringing out of being slaves into freedom, sometimes they would like to, oh, I don't want to do this, and they would give up her position. So she had to do a warning, and some people didn't make it. They didn't get it by the overseer. Harriet had to pull that gun out and say, no, you are not going to get the rest of us caught because you become weak-kneed. So that's why I say Nat Turner, because what he did with his insurrection and those group of slaves that were screaming for freedom, and I don't even want to use the word revenge, because that's what the conversations will be about. What caused you to make this move at this time? What were you looking to do? Because God knows Harriet Tubman was one of the greatest people in this country and should be on a lot of different money. She really should. Because she went all the way up into Canada, turned around and said, let me go get some more. That's giving. That's the gift that, what can we say? That's a blessing. So that's my choice there, Troy. My name is Dr. Dre.
So again, Dr. Sarita is back. Okay.
Look, I ran to get this picture because I wanted my sisters to see this. And when I got my picture, I was running to get it and unplugged everything. But I wanted to show my sisters these. And you know what? And we can be one of those great women. I don't know if you can see it. I can send the thing to Troy and he can send it to everybody else. But these are great women. They did the slaves and everything. The picture's just phenomenal. And when I look at it, I glean that we can follow some of those footsteps. But my greatest person is, and I love Maya Angelou. And I love some of the wisdom that she had and the resilience that she.
Okay, you froze a little bit there, but we got Maya Angelou. So thank you for that. But again, guys, this has been the CARE Global Leadership Series. Not have asked for anything more special than what you folks have delivered this evening. I am eternally grateful to be locking arms with you. And I will leave us with the quote, one of my favorite quotes from Confucius. And Confucius said, before we can move the mountain, we must first start by removing small stones. Tonight,
Excuse me, Troy.
yes,
Can I say one thing to the panel?
of course.
This is Dr. Dre. I don't mean to interrupt the Confucius quote. I apologize, but I want to also apologize for not visually being on. Being a blind man, I find it humorous for me to put my picture on Zooms, because sometimes you might get a picture of my ceiling fan because I can't know I'm in front of the camera properly. But I want to thank everybody's patience with me for being on and not visually being there. But your words, your commentary, your wisdom, and your love, I can see all of you equally. Even at 3 a.m., it's a blessing to be here. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Troy.
You are welcome, my brother. And we will continue to break that mountain down until we get done. And then what are we going to do? We're going to move on to another mountain. So again, on behalf of Sonia O. Campbell, Sonia, thank you so much for hanging in there. Bernadette Floyd, thank you so much. Cheryl Manette, thank you so much. And my esteemed panel of global leaders, Chanel Dickerson, Dr. Sarita Graham, Lisa Camara, and Dr. Dre. God bless you all. Thank you so much. And look for the next Global Leadership Series, Spiritual Leaders, coming in May 2023. Thank you so much again. Peace and blessings, everyone, and good night.